11 civilians became victims of a massive overnight shelling in Dobropillia, Donetsk region. 30 people were hospitalized. Behind me, you can see the burned cars of local residents, as well as an apartment building where firefighters worked through the night to extinguish the blaze. The first explosions in Dobropillia occurred in the night of March 7th, shortly after 9 p.m. The city has been shelled by Russian forces before, but locals say it was much scarier last night.
The explosions were strong, and it wasn't just one. First, one, then half an hour later another, then 3 in a row. The emotions are overwhelming. What kind of horrible men could prepare this test for people?
Russian forces struck the residential area 3 times. In their attack on civilians, they used the Tornado-S multiple rocket launcher system, the Iskander operational tactic missile system, and the Geran-2 strike drone. The residential building caught the fire in just few minutes. 76-year-old Nadia says she felt something like this may happen.
They say people died in the 4th entrance, burned alive. I wasn't scared. For some reason, I was ready for this. I wasn't scared then, but today I'm starting to cry.
As a result of the shelling, 8 apartment buildings, shops and 30 civilian cars were damaged. Vitalina and her husband's personal car was completely destroyed. But the most important thing, she says, is that they are alive.
I was at home yesterday, and my husband was on duty. He works in the police. When the shelling happened, I was lucky to be in a shelter between 2 walls. That's what saved me. Our animals were injured, but not seriously, thank God. We're actually displaced from Pokrovsk. We came here from there and got caught in this.
After the Russian attack, residents from other areas immediately came to help the victims. Many could not hold back their tears at the sight.
God, may he be well there. May there be sun and joy for him, together with his children.
Volunteers also came to assist the victims, distributing around 70 emergency kits to those affected. This included blankets, lead linens, hygiene sets and thermoses. Last night, while rescuing people, a volunteer from one of the humanitarian organizations sustained serious injuries.
When the first strike happened, he ran to help the victims and unfortunately was hit by what seemed to be a cluster munition. He's alive, but in serious condition and currently receiving treatment in Dnipro.
On March 7th, 20 civilians were killed in Donetsk region and 58 others were injured, including 7 children. Today, a day of mourning has been declared in the region for the fallen. Reported by Alexander Zaslavets, Alena Hramova, Evgeny Karmazin, Alexander Kolichev from Donetsk region, UATV News. Over 5 million euros have been raised for the armed forces of Ukraine by the citizens of Slovakia. In March 2024, a civil campaign called Ammunition for Ukraine has launched in the country. This initiative was a response to Prime Minister Robert Fico's refusal to provide military aid to Kyiv. The campaign's slogan is, "If the government wants, we will send it." The funds raised are being used to purchase the 3rd batch of ammunition for Ukrainian troops, according to the organizers. On March 7th, tens of thousands of people took to the streets in Slovakia and abroad to protest against the pro-Russian policies of the government. They are demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Robert Fico due to his pro-Russian stance. The protesters are showing their support for Ukraine and Slovakia's European future.
I came because I don't agree with the direction this government is taking us. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and I want her to live in a country that follows values different from what our government representatives are showing us.
I came here because I care about our future and ensuring Slovakia remains in the European Union. I think it would be appropriate to replace the government with one that clearly declares our foreign policy orientation towards the West.
Mass protests in Slovakia began in January after Fico's visit to Moscow. The protests intensified after the Prime Minister publicly questioned Slovakia's membership in the EU and NATO. Fico's allies also contribute to the growing civil discontent. The deputy leader of the ruling party, Eric Kalinak, stated that if Russia had occupied Ukraine, Slovakia would have had a more reliable neighbor. In opposition, politicians called this stance a betrayal.
Fico is pulling us away from Europe, burning bridges with our allies. This is a betrayal. He has no legitimacy for this, and this government must resign as soon as possible. The only solution is early elections. From the Progressive Slovakia Party statement on Facebook.
Prime Minister Fico also demonstrated his disagreement with EU policies during the EU summit in Brussels. Before the meeting, Robert Fico and Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, stated that they might complicate decisions regarding financial and military support for Kyiv.
Of course, I am not against those who want to help Ukraine bilaterally. That's their business. But at a time when we are struggling with consolidation in Europe, I can't imagine giving €250 million to Ukraine for military expenses. Moreover, I think there is no reason for it. If Ukraine receives such huge assistance, it can't be a one-way ticket. Ukraine must also have obligations towards us.
The heads of government of Slovakia and Hungary are demanding that Ukraine resume the transit of Russian gas through its territory. According to President of Slovakia, Peter Pellegrini, this would be a gesture of gratitude to Europe. Opposition members believe the government's policy is aimed at destroying Slovakia's ties with Brussels.
What is happening now is a huge failure due to isolation at the European table, but even worse is leaving that table. How can the Prime Minister of the Slovak Republic expect support from other prime ministers when they see that he is leaving this European table?
And that Kyiv is unlikely to agree to resume Russian gas transit. After the summit in Brussels, Robert Fico stated that Minister of Economy Denisa Sakova is negotiating with the EU on the possibility of importing fuel from Azerbaijan. Reported by Alexander Zaslavets and Andriy Dmitrenko, UATV News.
The first day of negotiations between Ukraine and the United States in Saudi Arabia. From Kyiv, the head of the presidential office, Andriy Yermak, arrived. Before the meeting, he spoke to reporters and said, quote, "Security guarantees are very important because we want this aggression to never happen again in the future. Now, the most important thing, how to start the process of peace negotiations." Before talks, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Ukraine would have to make concessions on the territory that Russia has seized since 2014 as part of any agreement to end the war. Drone attack on Moscow. According to the Russian authorities, more than 300 drones attacked a total of 10 regions of Russia last night. The attack targeted the Okat Center oil depot near Moscow and railway tracks, paralyzing train traffic for several hours. The Diaghilev military airfield in the Ryazan region was also attacked. During the night and morning, airports in several cities in the European part of Russia were out of service. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte is arrested. The arrest warrant was issued by Interpol at the request of the International Criminal Court. Police say they deployed 379 officers to peacefully organize the process. Duterte is accused of mass extrajudicial killings during his presidency under the pretext of fighting drug trafficking. Police estimated that more than 6,000 people have been killed, but human rights activists believe the number of killings was much higher.